Welcome everyone, and today I'm going to discuss with some of the uh, important things, especially in the COVID-19. Always I said that we have a lot of economic challenge. We have a lot of economic issues we need to change, and we need to go for the strategic alignment. If we have a proper strategic alignment, then we can make it successful. If we have a proper strategic alignment, and most important thing, if we have a better policy, and if we have a better system, that time our economy can survive. So in that situations, actually I'm going to discuss about the federal deficit, surplus and national debt, and money and the federal reserve system. Federal deficit, surplus and the national debt. What will I learn in this topic? How the budgetary process formulate and finance our national debt. Why and why not worry over the national debt? So there is a circle. So we have to create formation of the budget February and December's. Then we go for the presidential budget. Then state go for the budget resolutions, and then it's go for the budget passes and the president shines September's. This is the major step of the federal budgetary process. So now question is that what is the Federal Reserve federal fiscal years 1st October through the September 30? What is the federal surplus? The amount by which government tax collection exceed government expenditure. The revenue of a government from taxes, tariff and other sources exceed its expenditures. A surplus means the budget is healthy, at least in the short terms, and the government does not have to resort to borrowing. What is the federal deficit? The amount by which government expenditure exceed tax collections. The deficit is the difference between the government spending and the government revenues, mainly taxes, for fiscal year 2019, which ended September 30, 2019. Total revenue was $3.5 trillion and total spending was $4.4 trillion. So what is the national debt? The amount owned by the federal government to owners of the government securities. National debt is the net accumulations of the federal government annual budget deficit. It is the total amount of money that the federal government owns to its creditors. What is the net profit debt? National debt minus all government interagency borrowing. Public debt is the amount of debt owned by a government to its creditors. The difference between gross public debt and the net public debt is simply that the value of asset owned by the government is subtracted from the gross debt amount to arrive a net figure. How does government treasury borrow money? By selling securities promising to make interest payment and to repay on a given date. What can be done to curb the national debt? Tax increase, spending caps, and debt selling. What is a debt selling? The legislated legal limit on the national debt. What usually happens when the debt pushes against the selling? Congress increased the selling to accommodate the budget circle, the budget defect. There are more questions. I try to give the question answer, and I try to figure out these things. Why worry over the national debt? Can the government go bankrupt? Are we passing the debt burden to our children? Does government borrow crowd out private sector spending? Can the federal government go bankrupt? No, federal government debt never must be paid off. But yes, household and the farm that continue to operate in the red go bankrupt. Are we passing the debt burden to our children? Yes, interest payment to the finance that national debt will shallow a bigger portions of the budget, but no, not as long as the bulk of the debt is internally owned. What is the internal national debt? The portions of the national debt owned to a national owned citizen. What is the external national debt? The portions of the national debt owned to a foreign citizen. What is the crowd out effect? When federal government borrow increasing interest rate, the result is lower consumption and the investment, which decrease the ad curve. Does government borrow crowd out private sector spending? Yes. The more the government borrow, the less the loan funding for everyone else. No, especially if it's occurred during economic downturn. The common form of crowding out take place when a government increase its borrowing. This borrowing can lead to substantial increase in the interest rate, which has the effect of absorbing the economic's lending capacity and discourage business from making capital investment. Because farm often fund such project in part or entirely through financing, they are now discouraged from doing so because the opportunity cost of the borrowing money has increased, making profitable project funded through loan cost prohibition. A global comparison of the national debt ratio 2009. So this is the x-axis, where the countries you can find Japan, Italy, Greece, Belgium, United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Sweden, and Australia. And this is the national debt as a percent of GDP. So here's the 200, Japan has 189%, Italy has 124%, Greece has 115%, Belgium had 101%, United States had 83%, Canada has 83%, United Kingdom has 71%, Sweden has 53%. On the other hand, Australia has 16%. So this is the themes we can start, and this is the way we can discuss in a different way. Uh, uh, so this is ultimately the way that how we can invent different kind of things. So if we go for the ownership of the national debt 2009, you can find foreigners has 28%, 29% private sector debt, individuals, bank, corporation, and insurance companies, and 43% public sector debt, federal, states, and the local government, and a federal reserve bank. So in that particular situations, actually, we have government stand and borrows. It push to the government competes with the private borrows. Then it push to the interest rate rise. Then it push to the consumer and the business spending decrease. And by this way, we get the AD and real GDP increase reduced. So money and the Federal Reserve systems. This is very important, that how we can understand uh, how we can understand uh, like the Federal Reserve System. What will I learn in this topic? Basically, the three function of the money, deflect of the money, and the organization and the service of the Federal Reserve System. So what is barter? The direct exchange of one good for another good rather than for money. People exchange service and the good for other service and good in returns. The value of bartering in terms can be negotiated with the other party. What is the problem with barter? It requires a coincidence of want and result in wasting time trying to make transaction. Lack of a standard unit of account with which to measure value of the different goods and services made exchange or trade difficult. Another problem faced under the barter system was impossible of subdivisions of the good without loss of their values. By this way, we can understand the barter system. And if we can understand the barter system at present conditions, we can add very interesting things in a professional way. What is money? Anything that serves as a medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of values. What is the advantage of the money? The use of money, simplifying and therefore increase market transaction. What are the function of money? Medium of exchange, unit of account, store of values. What is a medium of exchange? The primary function of the money to be widely accepted in exchange for goods and services. What is a unit account? The function of a money to provide a common measures of the relative value of the goods and services. What is the store of value? The ability of money to hold value over time. So there are some sort of critical questions. I'm trying to give answers. By this way, at least you can understand different kind of things. Uh, mm, uh, uh, mm, uh, uh, and by this way we can move to the next level. So are credit card money? No, credit card failed to meet the store of value creations, and therefore not money. So credit card naturally it's not a money, it's actually credit for the personal people. What does it means that money is liquid? It is available to spend it exchange for goods and services without any additional expense. What is another desirable property of money? The supply of money must be great enough to meet ordinary transaction need, but not be so plentiful that it become worthless. What are the other properties of the money? Money must be portable, divisible, uniform, acceptable. What is the fiat money? Money is set up by law and not because of redeemability. What are money supply definitions? M1 equals so currency, paper money, and coins plus checkable deposit. The total of checking account balance in financial institution convertibles to currency on demand by writing a check without advance notice. So M2 equals to M1 plus saving deposit plus small time deposit of the less than $100,000. What distinguish M1 from M2? M1 is more liquid than M2. Definition of money surplus. So this is the 51%. If it's a 1 million M1, it's a 1,693 billions of dollar. So in that situations, we have to understand that checkable deposit is 49% and currency is 51%. So M1 equals to 1,693 billion dollars. On the same hand, M2 equals to 8,525 billion dollar, whereas M1 is 20%, saving and small time deposit is 80%. So what is the Federal Reserve System? The 12 Federal Reserve District Bank, the Service Bank, and other financial institutions within each of the Federal Reserve District. What is the Board of Governance of the Federation? The 7-member appointment by the President and confirmed by the US Senate, who serve for one non-renewable 14-year term. What is the responsibility of the Fed boards of the governor? To supervise and control the money supply and the US banking system. What is the chairman of the board of governor? The president designate the one member of the board to reserve as a chair for a renewable 4-year term. What is the Federal Advisory Council? 12 prominent commercial bank who advise board member but who do not have voting rights. So this is some of the US 12 reserve districts. And most important thing is that I want to focus the organization of Federal Reserve System. Let's say in the US banking system, commercial bank, mutual saving banks, saving and the loan associated and the credit unit. Then we can for regional Federal Reserve banks, 12 district banks and the 25 branch banks, and then board of governors, 7 members. So in that situation, there is a Federal Advisory Council, 12 prominent commercial bank. On the other hand, it has a Federal Open Market Committee, Board of Governors, Federates of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, and 4 additional Federal Reserve Districts bank president. So in that situations, actually, we have to understand what is the purpose of the Federal Open Market Committee: to increase the money supply if we have unemployment or decrease it if we have inflation. What is the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC? The FOMC is the Fed committee that direct the buying and selling of US government securities. So there are more question answers I try to give the Federal Reserve Bank and this kind of policy. So what does the Federal Reserve Bank do? Control the money supply, clerk checks, supervise and regulate banks, maintain and circulate currency, protect consumer, maintain federal government checking account and gold. What is the Federal Dispute Insurance Corporation, FDIC? The FDIC is a government agency established in 1933 to ensure commercial bank deposit up to a specified limit. What is the Monetary Control Act? A 1980 law that gave the federal government control of non-member banks and the make all financial institutions more compatible. So I just want to give some of the bank information shares. Here is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. Y-axis actually the assets is $1 billion asset. Bank of America, this is the number one position. They have more than 2,000. JP Morgan's, they have around $2,000 billion. Citigroup, they have around 2,000. Wells Fargo, they have around more than 1,000. Goldman Sachs, they have around like less than 1,000. Uh, Morgan Stanley, it has around 700. MetLife, it's more or less 500. HSBC, less than 500 billion dollar. Barclays, it has less than $500 billion. And Taunus corporations, it has less than 1,000. This is one of the American system, how they actually run their banking systems, and how they actually critically launch a different kind of interesting sessions. And if we can understand this kind of policy, if we can understand this kind of strategy, and if we can create a more knowledgeable strategy for the banking systems, so in this pandemic situations, actually we can handle it in a professional way. And if we can handle these things in a professional way, that time that time we can go to the next level. So I request to the all of the banking systems, and all of the banking system and everything, we need to be very much careful. We need to be very much optimistic. We need to be very much professionals, how we can move with the strategy, how we can create more valuable monetary strategy, and how we can adding more effective and strategy for our nations. If we can create this kind of strategy, and if we can make a affordable strategy and pricing for our nations, that time we actually can save our nation. And most important point of view is that this COVID period, very very important. This COVID period, we have to be very much careful. This COVID period, we need to be very much strategic. So if we can solve this kind of strategic issues, that time we can move with a different way. So this is ultimately the objective. This is ultimately the way that how we can measure our problem, how we can understand our problem, and how we can create more valuable things for our nations. This is ultimately the objective of our nations. This is ultimately the like things that we can learn from the developed nations, and we can implement it if it can helpful for our nations, and we can save our nations. So thank you. I can understand that it's a little bit of criticals sessions. Maybe it's a difficult for our some of the audience, but if you have any questions, I'm ready to give you answer. Beside that, Nurul Afsars, Shishir, Arah Mehraz, and Muhammad Sohail Rana, I want to give you special thanks for your valuable support. So thank you. And especially World Talent Economy Forum, we have a very important and interesting summit today. So I request all of our audience, please join the World Talent Economy Forum Summit. It will be futuristic leadership, and by this way you can grow your knowledge, skills, and attitude. This is our ultimately objective. Thank you very much, and thank you all for your valuable support.